click the magic button, and theoretically, we are streaming on Twitch. Hit refresh on the Twitch just to oh, yep, I see our faces. That is a very good
Yes.
sign. Good morning, my friend. How are you, DaShaun? Welcome to Between Chair and Keyboard. It's good to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Life is good. And yeah, like I feel like I've had some therapy this morning. Just
We did have a
sometimes
nice chat already, didn't we?
sometimes and I get this from our friend Josh Long, that just one point he had, and it was a tweet, but he's just like, sometimes you just have to say the things, that we just assume,
Mm-hmm.
and it's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of stuck. And I realize sometimes it's nice to repeat the things that we think are obvious, whether it's a level set or whatever, whoever's paying attention. Sometimes it's nice to just repeat, to say, hey, just so we're clear, today's a holiday and I'm happy to be here. And that we had our little pre chit chat was great.
Yes.
It was enough for me to feel like, hey, I've had an adult conversation on this holiday, and I feel like I'm headed in the right direction today.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad we could have that. I wish I could give you a hug. I wish we were in person. I miss seeing you.
This is it.
This is all we could do for the time being. I mean, eventually we'll get vaccinated, we think, sometime. I don't know.
Yeah, I think at
Fingers
this
crossed.
rate, it's May,
2035.
right? Exactly. May 2035 is what I think the
I
current rate is.
talked to a friend of mine last week, and he, I believe, is scheduled for June. And he didn't say the year, but I assume he meant this year. So,
It's
fingers
always the
crossed.
question, right? When
Fingers
somebody
crossed.
just says the month, you
Hmm.
always have
Hmm.
to ask
You
what
do.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I do have one golf buddy who apparently has been vaccinated, and I think that's because his wife was a longtime person at Mayo, and so I think that helped. He must have had some connections there, although he is
Mm,
over retirement age, so I'm sure he qualifies multiple ways. But still, it does leave us wondering. But eventually, we'll be back together in person. I'm convinced of that.
yes,
So thank you for joining me from your. We won't call it a bunker anymore because of the
that's
beautiful
not a bunker.
paneling that you've done, which
Yeah,
I again complimented you on. So thank you for that. So
yeah,
what
I
do you
like it.
what are you doing these days? What are you working on? What's new and interesting?
Uh, I am. I'm growing. Right. I'm out. I'm definitely in a learning phase.
Amen to that.
Um, Somebody kind of explained this like learning sharing cycle,
Yeah.
and it's how I've kind of adopted learning. Like as we're moving along in our career, uh, what I like to, hey, let's go continuous learn. Like let's go pick up something, try to digest it maybe, and then share it. And that sharing part is the part where this is what I think I know for the first while, right?
Yeah.
There's that curve, like this is what I think I know, but then after I've shared enough and gotten feedback, then I feel confident, and I'm going to try learn something else. So I have this in my head, this learning sharing cycle, and now I'm on this kind of learning side of that, about to get into the sharing side.
Nice. See, that's the thing I love about our job. We always have new things to play with and learn, and then try to go teach it to somebody else. That's what I love about what I do. Anyways, I get to play with new technologies, then do my best to go teach it to somebody else. And I think that's the best way to learn is trying to teach it.
It is.
Based on my
That
experience.
is. And I sometimes uh, community were like, "Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with me." And I'm like, "Thank you for letting me."
Right.
Right?
Right.
Little do you know, like this, I got just as much benefit out of this conversation, if not more, than
Right.
you did.
I've had multiple people ask me like, "How do you learn something?" And I say, "Well, if you really want to give yourself that I need to learn this, volunteer to give a talk on it in 6 to 8 weeks, and that'll give you the motivation."
Absolutely, absolutely. I do, and it was wonderful to hear that from you, because yeah, I'm I'm comfortable like digging into things, like to say, hey, yeah, I'll go, and um, I probably don't dig as deep as I need to, because I'm always like, I connect the dots. Well,
Right.
hey, I learned an inch deep, but look at all these other things that I can do now,
Hmm.
and that whole breadth first. Maybe that's my strategy. Uh, I like to say that I'm a generalist. I don't go super deep on a whole lot of things, but
Sure.
I've got touches on a lot of things.
So you're an
And
architect, so that's how that works. We're only supposed to be an inch deep and a mile wide. That's okay.
yeah, what are the, here's your sample doc. Now go build the enterprise around it, right?
Small matter of
But it's
implementation detail.
totally my idea right here. Right.
Exactly. No, we were talking before. You're on the data side now for the first time in a long time, and I know I've mostly been a front end developer, and so my job is basically get the data to the server, and then I like to joke that squirrels put it in trees or something. How has that transition been? What is there anything that's really surprised you about being more intimately tied to data than you were expecting, or anything kind of leap off the page at you?
uh, how quickly the conversations go to like fine grained implementation details.
Sure.
Like when you're in that space, it's not just like, oh, use this data type, use this data type. Like, hey, it's immediately, well, here's our thing and here's what we need. It goes deep fast.
Sure.
And I'm still learning. I'm surrounded by a bunch of super smart, talented solution architects that they know inside the box. And really, even though I'm in this space, I think that my role is more about connecting,
Yeah.
like connecting that data. Like, how do you make it work in different situations? I know that we sometimes we find a pattern. Hey, this pattern worked, and a lot of organizations they have like pattern A, B, or C. Like, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to do REST? Are you trying to do streaming?
Hmm.
Like, what is it? Like, pick one. But they have these patterns, the way they implement it, and a lot of times those patterns get repeated, and sometimes not for the best outcome. I get to joke about all the ways that I've abused uh, MySQL and Postgres. Like, yeah, I can recall. And actually, I recently found a implementation of a queue that I did against MySQL.
Sure.
Right, like it worked. I mean, it wasn't fast and had plenty of problems, but it worked.
Right.
Right, for the for the customer space for whatever we were doing, it made it to production
Sure.
and got repeated, right? For every implementation after that. Like, why would we need to go find a better implementation of a
Right.
queue?
Right.
This one works.
Well, and we tend to fall into that in organizations. It's, well, we've always done it that way. And then
Hmm.
you ask, well, why? And it's like, well, I don't know, because I saw that pattern and I copied it and I pasted it and it worked
Yep.
until it didn't. And then we had to take a step back and go, oops.
Yeah. And then how do you introduce a new pattern into an organization?
Yeah.
That's a interesting topic that, yeah, that could be its own talk, right?
Heck
Like,
yeah.
how do you introduce that new pattern for people to adopt? And I have some ideas around it. I'm practicing on that. Like, trying to not just come in and do things the way that they've been done.
Right.
I'm kind of lucky in that sense where it's kind of a new role, and that was kind of the appeal. It was like
Sure.
there's nobody's done this before, so there's no path here that's been worn. So let's yeah,
Choose your own
go ahead
adventure book
and
at
see if
that
we
point.
yeah make one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I certainly can relate to that. I know throughout my career, that's been part of my job, try to bring these new ideas in. And it is a challenge because you do run into that sort of institutional inertia of, again, to use the phrase, that's how we've always done it.
Yeah.
And that's another one of the benefits, I think, of our job is we sometimes get that opportunity to come in and have that unencumbered view. We don't have that baggage to help people see there might be another way. You've got kids, I've got one. And just last night, we were having this discussion at dinner. My son, for a school project, is trying to sort of remix a song. And he's very adamant that there's only one way to do that, that he has to learn how to play the song first so he can lay down all the tracks. And then I'm like, you don't think there's some way we could just find the tracks or buy the tracks? And it was like this 7-minute repeat of him just saying the same things over and over again. And my wife and I trying various ways to get him to see other options. It's kind of what we have to do in organizations sometimes, is say, okay, I hear you saying the same words to me. There might be another approach. Have we thought about that?
Yeah, that is a tool, a lesson that I learned while I used to coach cheerleading, and I could, hey, you have to point your toes, right?
Sure.
That's one of those things when you're doing your job, you got to point your toes. And I could say, point your toes, point your toes, point your toes. And they're like, I don't, I am, right? They're,
Right.
they're, they're stuck, but I could bring anybody else in. I could bring Nate in to the gym. This is Nate. He's the best jump coach in the world.
In the world.
And you'll come in and you'll say, hey, try not to flex your feet. Like, just different words,
Right.
different
Right.
person. And they're like, oh, thank you so much.
That I
Thank you.
understand.
Thank you, Nate.
Yep.
Sometimes we can say the exact same thing
Yeah.
and just be heard differently. So sometimes it just takes a different voice.
Yeah.
And I thought that the path you're going to go down with your kid was, hey, I'm trying to help you see another way. I'll step out, let wifey step in, and done. She could say the exact same words, but because it's mom,
Right.
it
It's
means
different.
something different. Yeah.
Oh, I've definitely seen that. I'm sure you have as well with coaching. Trying to coach your own children is impossible, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
Everett plays golf with me, and I remember a couple years ago I was trying to get him to do something a little different with his swing, and he was not listening to me at all. And then he had a clinic, and I asked our pro, I said, "What were you teaching him?" And he told me, and I looked at my kid and I said, "Those are the exact same things I was trying to tell you." But see, this came from someone else, not from me. When it
Yeah.
comes from me, it has to be discounted. It's like, all right, I kind of get that a little bit, right? That's part of the plight of being a parent.
And I will find, like, in like our customers, the orgs that we're working with, one of the things that I see a lot is that person that says, I understand you and I understand everything you're saying. And I just wish that somebody else could understand that.
Mm,
They can't tell their peers, hey, this is a cool way of doing things. But if they can bring them
right,
to one of your talks,
right.
right? It's like, hey guys, follow me. Let's go listen to Nate. He's really, really smart. And you'll say the exact same thing that they've been saying,
Hmm.
but because it comes from you,
Right.
because you're on stage, it means something different. It's that validation. So I think there's a lot of people that get it and they're moving in that direction, but the inertia,
Yeah.
the stuff, that we're out doing, it has impact, right? Sometimes we don't get to hear it, sometimes we just have to understand, like, this is helping somebody somewhere
Right.
go forward.
That's a great way of phrasing it. So now that you're on the data side, do you understand all the rules for dropping vowels and every third consonant out of naming for columns? Or is it still a mystery?
That is still a
Okay.
mystery. It's still, yeah, completely foreign. I still have not gone on that path yet to understand where that came from. And I'm
Do
sure
you
it
have
was
to go
just
full DBA to get that?
somebody
It must be, right? Just full DBA
write
before
a
you understand.
passage,
Yeah,
some gatekeeping somewhere that says, hey,
right.
you're not ready for
No,
this.
no.
Yeah.
This is just too much for you.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't yet.
Okay. That makes me feel
But
better because that was always, one of those things that amazed me when working with DBAs is you'd give them, this is what I need, and then come back and you're like,
you named it wrong.
I don't understand what any of these words mean. And they're like, you're not supposed to. I'm like, oh, okay, cool, 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 cool. But I still think most
Yeah.
data just gets stored in trees by squirrels. Right? There's just no getting around
Yep.
it. So, and I think
Yeah.
that's great. It does a good job. It works. We've
Yeah.
always done it that way. But,
Right. And you're still teaching at university, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I got a class coming
And
up. I think it starts on Saturday. Oh my god, I better go get my course page live, or my students aren't going to know what to do on Saturday.
there you go. But you bring up trees, like all the different trees that we learned, data structures, uh, red blue trees, binary trees, all these different things, B tree. Uh, yeah, isn't that how all the databases
I think
are
so.
built? Like
Yeah, I'm pretty
it
sure.
has to be, since we spent so much time on it.
Right.
Uh, it's magic. And then still, people are today, they're making that part of their interview process. Hey, go ahead and write this B tree implementation. Fill it out for us.
Is it? I've only ever been in software, but I'm curious. When they're interviewing like doctors, do they say, "Okay, well, we'd like you to just here on the table perform an appendectomy"? I mean, is that part of the interview process for doctor?
I don't know.
Or
I
really
don't
any
know.
specialty, right? I mean, if you're like a lawyer or like a plumber, do they say, "Okay, here, quick, solder these two pieces together"? I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe, but it just
yeah.
seems so weird that we get fixated on. We're going to give you something to do that you're not actually going to do in your day to day life
Ever.
ever. But here with a whiteboard and under this ridiculous time pressure, go ahead and do binary sort. Why not?
Yeah,
Sure, sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But
It's
hiring's
just
hard.
hiring is hard. Like, and especially now, like it has to be crazy.
Yeah,
And I'll say, I I made a move during this global pandemic. It was hard.
I bet.
It was a very, very hard decision. Uh, but now, like I hear, like people are making these moves and
Yeah,
things are changing. And I think a big part of that is our structures. like, oh, I don't have to be on campus, or the
Yeah.
campus is closed. So do we really need to hire somebody within driving range? That
Right.
was, I think that was actually even against the law that, you can't ask how far somebody lives. I
Sure.
think we lived through that. But that whole idea of I can get somebody from somewhere else to, do this role. I can't remember. Stack Overflows, one of their founder creator came in and gave a talk, and he was just like, and this was in 2010, maybe 2011. And he's just like, look, we don't have an office. We're fully remote. We do this, we'll have a window open and everybody just kind of be there. I don't
Mhm.
care where you are in the world, but there's kind of these core hours that we just
Sure.
want you to be like on a video
Be
chat or whatever
available.
system it was then. And he's like, and that allows me to hire the best person for the role. And I just was like, this is
Right.
amazing. Like, to think that was the kind of the dream. I
Yeah.
had somebody in my life that in the 80s was working from home in Grand Forks, North Dakota, in an office much like yours, and doing his day job.
Right.
He was on, he had one side for work, and then
Sure.
this side was for his personal stuff
Right.
and
Right.
where he was teaching me. But I didn't realize it at the time, but it was an influence, right?
Sure.
And I was young and getting into high school, and you learn about like Walden Woods and being off the grid and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. And well into college, I was so like geek that I was convinced I was going to live in northern Minnesota on a lake, just like in War Games. I was going to have a satellite because that's as much as I knew.
Right.
And that's how I was going to connect to the internet. I was going to be off the grid. I was going to be 100% solar in Minnesota, right? I didn't connect those dots, but I was going to be off the grid and do my job. And that was kind of the goal. It was like
Sure.
that just I don't need all the other stuff. I'm good. I'm in this hole. And up until that point, up like I said, up until well into my college career, I was that solo engineer. Like, hey, here's the thing.
Hmm.
Can you go knock that out? And I bring the finished product back later. But then, I make it into my 40s, still doing kind of the stuff and realizing working together
Yeah.
is pretty amazing. I
Hmm.
did a little bit of like the extreme programming back
Hmm.
in 99, 2000. Uh, and it was great. We did some really amazing things for a company you may have heard of, Enron. Remember
I
that ring any
have.
bells?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did some stuff. So it really didn't really get to kind of like
Silver
make the
lining.
light of day. Yeah. But we did some really cool things and it kind of stuck. I picked up some things that I liked
Sure.
along the way. But then at Pivotal, this whole pair programming the Pivotal way was like, this is amazing. So I got
Hmm.
to see it in action and got to practice it. Got to practice it like, hey, you and I, we're going to hop in. Let's dig in. We both signed up for a talk in 8 weeks. Let's work together
Let's go do it.
and yeah, and figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. These are some of those practices that work. And I like to say it makes it stickier. So it's
Yeah.
not just hey, we got the talk done, but we got the talk done and we were bouncing ideas off of each other. So we had some of like the connecting of the dots that I might have
Hmm.
gone down this path, you might go down this path.
Hmm.
And it's amazing, right? To understand like, yeah, it's great. I can go and get something done on my own. And yeah, great. I still get the dopamine,
Yeah.
along the way, like, oh, I figured that out. Okay, now keep on going. But doing it together, it stays, right? That project that I did actually a year and a half ago, like I still remember because of the pairing. I remember the emotions that went along with it,
Yeah.
not just the dopamine. I remember, oh, we made this decision because, and it's hard. That's still surprisingly a hard concept for people to understand
Sure.
is that you shouldn't be locked off. So it kind of brings us back to the everything's remote,
Yeah.
but there's this concept, I think, this trend where people are working more together. They're having to communicate. You don't get the body language signals that you might have from walking down the hall or sitting in a room together. But I, the whole thinking out loud part,
Yeah.
like being comfortable just thinking out loud and saying what's on your mind, uh, that's a skill.
Oh yeah.
All right, it's a skill that we haven't listed as a soft skill yet, but it's one of those things that I absolutely appreciate, and especially on Twitch. I
Right.
totally lurk. I'll go and I'll find somebody that there's 10 people watching, but I look for like people that are live coding. If I can see a terminal or
Oh
an
sure.
IDE on the screen, I just want to like
Show me what you're doing. Show me how
Right?
you do
Yeah.
it.
And the thing is, I always ask, like,
Yeah.
tell me what you're thinking. Think out loud.
Hmm.
And it helps so much. It helps me understand like where's their head at. It helps me understand what what patterns do they have? Like where is their mind going? If I can help, I'm happy to. But understanding what they're trying to do really helps versus just like watching them type. That's a hard thing.
Right.
So yeah, we have these. We're in this brave new world of what are things going to look like going forward.
Oh
I have
yeah.
no idea, but
Yeah.
I'm paying attention.
Yeah. Well, we'll delve into that here, but I want to touch on this being able to bounce ideas off each other because I do think that's one of the most underrated aspects of working with other human beings, of pairing, of doing that sort of approach. Because we have a tendency, and we were talking about this earlier, of kind of getting stuck that this is the path I have to go down. And this is something I give my wife a lot of credit for. She's very good at helping me see that and going, well, hang on, stop solutioning me. What are your requirements? That's what happens when you have a BA for a wife, right? She keeps coming back to that point, and it's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. There actually could be a better way of doing this. And when you pair with somebody, or even when you just, hey, can I have you look at this? Give me some notes. Oh, it
Yep.
never even occurred to me to use that example. Or, well, I've always solved this problem this way. And you're like, yeah, but did you know about this? No,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that was an option. And I think we get stuck sometimes in that regard, and we don't know that there's an alternative path because well, that way's always worked before, and it's in production, and
Hmm.
I saw it in production, so I just copied and pasted it, and still works. Yeah, but you could have done this, and it would have been faster, more efficient, simpler, easier to understand, easier to test. Oh, never even occurred to me. Wow.
A lot of times we get something done. This is an example. Hey, um, I'm going to do a demo, or I'm going to propose something to my team, and I'm just going to go work on it myself. And hey, here it is. It's queuing in a relational database, but here it is, right? And deliver it. And yeah, they're like, oh, okay, that works. We'll take that and we'll go forward. I Without getting anybody else's input. Now,
Hmm.
if person, who said, oh, we got to implement this thing, we got to figure out a solution to this thing. If they had gotten other input, right? If the whole like tiger team approach, like, hey, let me get some people in a room. Maybe it's just a call for an hour. Let's talk about it. Let's just think out loud for a little bit. And
Yeah.
have you ever seen anything? Have you ever done this before? If I can get those ideas during the process, I think the output is a little bit better.
Yeah.
The
100% agree.
outcomes are better. And it's one of those things, learning how to learn,
Yeah.
right? I always think of Andrew Clay Schaefer, like his continuous learn, there's no talent shortage, that whole like, you have to learn how to adapt and how to go for it. I'm always kind of mapping that to situations where, and especially now, I'm trying to help people understand tech, that try to get into tech,
Yeah.
be, I'm trying to be a representative. I want to be visible, and trying to make that an option, make that a path, and help them understand you have to be learning all the time.
Right.
And I think, again, my opinion, my experience is, if you're doing it with someone, it will be stickier.
Yeah.
You can get more out of the time that you put in. Uh, Again, that's my opinion. And how do you learn something? You do it.
Right.
You got to repeat it. You have to practice.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think that's why I like saying we have a practice of doing these things. So
Yeah, no, I think being able to, again, be able to bounce the ideas off one another, to have someone question, what did you mean by that? It
yeah,
helps clarify your thinking. There's no getting around it. It's like when you write something and then you have someone else read it, they notice all of your typos because your brain just fills in the gaps. It's the same thing. If I'm not going to pair on this, well, then I just have my brain's viewpoint. If I'm pairing with you, I have to actually describe what I'm trying to do, and I'll go, oh, actually, I don't understand what I'm trying to do here. Yeah, let's talk more about that, and you have the ability to point out, well, that there's a simpler way of doing this, or Nate, this is too complicated. I can't understand what you're doing, or what, you are such an idiot for trying to do that. It's like, oh, okay, you're right. There is a better way. I didn't know this language feature existed. I had that happen
yep,
to me at almost the very beginning of my career. I was given this really simple task: go capitalize addresses or something silly like that, and my technical person, technical lead hands me this routine. Use this routine, and I'm looking at it, and it's got like 5 inputs, and I'm like, all I want you to do is capitalize this string. How does that require multiple inputs to do that? And so I'm like, all right, I haven't done this language very long, but there has to be another way. And so I do a little bit of searching, and sure enough, there's a capitalize function in the language. So I just used that. And then in my weekly meeting, we are talking about it as a team, and I mentioned that, and every room just looks at me, and I'm like, "You guys didn't know there was a capitalize in this language? Like seriously?
Yeah, we're building the org around.
I've been writing in this language for I don't know, like 6 weeks, and you guys have been doing this for years. Okay, that was also a reminder to me that we do get stuck, and
Mhm.
and with experience, sometimes you're just like, oh, yep, I go back to that comfortable way of doing it, and we don't realize there might be a better approach, an alternative approach, or just a new approach. Lots of stuff changes in languages if you're not constantly to your point, constantly learning and growing. It's easy to get stuck in. Well, that's how we did it in Java 1.4. Well,
Yeah.
okay,
Yep. And you even mentioned the word comfort.
yeah,
The idea, I kind of had this mental model of comfort zone,
yeah,
where like, hey, you can be in your comfort zone and continue to do the patterns that you've been doing. Great, be in your comfort zone. You know that well. Yeah, go forth. Or you can get out of your comfort zone. You can go dig like, hey, new version of Java comes out. Like, what could I do?
right. What are
Let
the
me go
features?
see, right? Oh, there's a different way of doing this thing that I'm super comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to just be cool, or would you like to stretch
Right,
and maybe go explore?
right.
And I think that's where the personal growth happens. And yeah, that's again another opinion.
Yeah,
And also with the bouncing ideas back and forth. Hey, I've got a talk to do tomorrow. I would really like to just like have you sit on Zoom while I'm going through this. So instead
yeah,
of me being on my own trying to cram through this thing, and I've seen it. I don't think I've ever put myself in that position, but I've seen it where I got to do this talk for tomorrow, and then they just go and lock themselves into a room
right.
and don't get any input from anybody. Versus, hey, can I bring in, help me out, help me think out loud,
Yep,
be that thing, be that voice, be that audience that I need to be considering for this thing. It's just a tiny little change.
right,
And I'm lucky that I have people in relationships that I can
right,
lean on
right.
when I'm in that situation.
Yeah, listen
That's
to this.
another piece,
Yeah,
is the people. If we're, yeah, sitting in that seat and we're focused on the one thing and we're not considering the people that are involved,
right.
yeah, it's a totally different career.
Yeah.
It's a totally different journey. Uh, One that you're thinking about the people that are affected and involved, and one that you're not. And I've seen both paths.
Well, that is one of the big shifts that I've certainly seen in my career. And I remember when I was in college, there was still that era where, at least the beginning of my college career, where it was the solo engineer. And I
Yep.
remember one summer being an intern at some company, and that was very clearly the case. There was one guy I was working with who I don't think he ever looked me in the eye the entire summer because he was extremely introverted and nice enough guy, right? Every time I have a bug or a problem, I could go talk to him and he would kind of glance over his shoulder. That was about all I'd get out of him. But that era has changed. I mean, we can't do this job by ourselves. There is no one engineer to code it all. And I do think it's interesting to see that shift, that this is becoming a communal game. I mean, I would argue it always has been, but I do think that we're stronger as a community. We have better solutions. We come up with better approaches if we have that larger community looking at it.
There is an African proverb that we can go fast on our own, but we go further together.
Oh, I love that.
That just, it's stuck. And I see it all the time too in this startup space, the little incubators. It's, business person, front end person, one engineer. And oh, this is how we're gonna go. This is what we're gonna do. And oh, we're bringing a bunch of salespeople. There's still that one front end, one back
Mm-hmm.
end, and bring in more salespeople, bring in more leadership at one back end, one front end, and then they just keep on leaning
Right.
on that small group. And those, they're maybe not in the same room. They maybe have
Yeah.
different objectives. But yeah, that's one of those things that I continue to see. I think it's less, and I'm trying to open the doors to other ways of going forward. And I think there is. Um, segments of the community that have seen success
Sure.
when you have this, collaborative environment for development, and yeah, don't try to put everything on one engineer. I've
Hmm.
seen that happen.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and I think it's starting to trend in that direction.
Yeah. So let's circle back to remote work because this is something I've talked to a lot of people about in the last few months in particular. We're basically a year into, for many people, work from home full time. And this has been my life for 4 or 5 years, however long it is I've been at Pivotal VMware. But it does seem to be sticking, and I'm curious to see what happens in a year from now when presumably most of us are vaccinated. Do you think we're going back to status quo, or you think things are going to be different? I mean, are you going to get that house in northern Minnesota? Because I can help you out there. Yeah.
Um, it's still on the list.
Okay.
It's still a goal.
Northern
It
Minnesota is
might not be
beautiful.
northern. It might not be northern Minnesota,
It's fine.
but having the lake house, I always say that I don't plan to retire.
Sure.
Um, the same person that I had in my life that was that influence that was working from home in the 80s continues to work
Sure.
from his lake house in northern Minnesota, but well beyond retirement age.
Mm-hmm.
Him and my dad, they're buddies, same age. Like my dad's retired, but he continues to have this, um, lifestyle where he's got his computer and he can go and continue to do work and continue to like enjoy what he does.
Right.
And I feel like I am on a path where I continue to get more and more excited. Like I'm getting more energized the further I go down
Sure.
my career. So this remote work, I think it's catching on.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know what that means for communities, for culture, but I think it's caught on in a lot of other places. We just didn't realize that.
Right.
Um, I have been exposed to some of these communities around the world where the laptop and the desktop and the 5 monitors isn't common,
Sure.
where blackouts, power cycles, scheduled power cycles through the day are actually common.
Right.
So people have learned how to develop on their phones.
Oh wow.
Their phone and the phone battery is what keeps them going through a day.
Sure.
So hey, we'll be plugged in for the first hour, and then we're gonna have the blackout then. So we're gonna have to, we won't have power, but we'll keep on doing. And they're developing in this way.
Wow.
So there's extremes, and I would say that's probably on one end of the extreme
Mm-hmm.
globally, but it's happening, and there is no other option.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have the option of I'm going to go work someplace that's downtown and I'll have a 1 hour commute and that'll be fine.
Right.
That's not an option.
Right.
Yet amazing things are still being done in those communities, and yeah, I think we're just kind of starting to figure out people are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All people are pretty awesome, and yeah, and this is just an interesting place in our culture that is kind of it's an enzyme. It's an accelerator. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're doing things and it's happening.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend of mine about this, and he was telling me that someone in his organization actually works in HR, moved to northern Minnesota. Apparently, this is the one about northern Minnesota. I
Yeah,
mistitled
yeah.
this when I apologize to Sean. But normally you would think that in that role you have to be in the office to be able to have the conversation with the door closed or whatever it is that you need to do in the HR space. And they're like, no, we're comfortable with you moving to the point where she's not going to commute down to the cities to do this job. She's going to do this job from, I don't know exactly where she's based, but at least a couple hours away. And I suspect that as organizations awaken to, oh wow, we actually can do this, my people can be trusted to do their job without me, watching over them in the cube farm.
Mhm.
But by the same token, a lot of individuals are looking at this going, I like my quality of life better because I don't enjoy spending an hour and commuting. I mean, that's one of the things I loved about transitioning into this role. I traded in micro doses of commute stress for macro doses of commute stress and got them over in large dollops. So yes, I would
Yep.
experience the canceled flight or the delayed flight or whatever, but I'd rather do that than every day driving in traffic and that
Yeah.
micro just
Uh,
anger of someone cutting you off.
uh.
So I think it's
Gray
going to
Volvo again. I saw you
it's the
yesterday.
minivans. It's the minivans. I have a friend
Yeah.
that's his thing. It's always the minivans. To completely generalize. But I think it's going to be fascinating to see that, and I hope that this is the beginning of a new way of thinking about this. That a
Hmm.
lot of companies are going to say, "Geez, we don't need this massive office space anymore." To your point earlier, not all of the best people conveniently live within 30 or 40 miles of your headquarters. Who could
Yep.
have predicted this? Some people choose to live in northern Minnesota,
Yep. Yep.
although winters there are worse than down here in the cities. So keep that in mind. It's there's no more snow and it's colder.
Well, I don't know if you know this. I born and raised in North Dakota,
But then you know all about it. So
Red River Valley. Yeah, I'm like this is that's 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 home still.
okay,
I've lived in Kansas City most of my life
yeah,
now, but yeah, North Dakota's still home. I still have lots of family there, and yeah, I still think about it often. So
nice.
yeah, I
I
get it.
I didn't know I did
Fond
not know you were
memories.
born and raised there. That's good to
Yeah.
know. See, this is why I love having this because I get an opportunity to learn more about my friends, what I thought
Yeah.
I knew, and then here's what I really know. But
Yeah.
yeah, North Dakota gets a bad rap. I love the fact that in the Cohen movie about that they make it very clear that that's not actually in Minnesota, and yet everybody seems to think that it is. It's like, yeah, sorry, that's not how that works, but
Yep.
it's okay. It's all part of the
The,
joke.
I still to this day when I say North Dakota, that's where Mount Rushmore is, right?
It's the other one.
Yeah.
It's the warmer Dakota.
It's surprising, um, but I get it,
Yeah.
right? I don't know the details about the other 50 states, so yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Well,
I
I
think remote.
see. This is one of those things when you watch. I don't know if you watched any of the election coverage, but watching these guys go through like county by county kind of things. And I remember watching this for a little bit, going, outside of the county I live in and the counties that are immediately around me,
How do you know?
I couldn't tell you. Like, I know a lot of the county names in Minnesota, but if you said, Nate, where is this county? I'd be like, I don't know. Could be Southwest, could be Northeast, could be by Fargo. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know my county and a couple counties around me, and that's about it. Like, I'm not even 100% sure what counties St. Paul and Minneapolis are in. They're two big cities. So, you know,
yeah, I
I
don't.
know it's part of the 7 county metro area. That tell
Yeah,
you something? So, yeah, it's amazing how that works. But I guess if that's your job, you'd memorize that. Or
and
they've
that's
just
one of
got
those things
someone
I
talking in
definitely
their ear.
I pick up on that. Like that's totally possible, but I pick up on that when it seems like they have that very interesting specific detail about the one thing.
Hmm.
It I'm impressed, always
Right.
impressed when, and it doesn't matter what level, whether it's election coverage or other, or just like a commercial, when there is like that fine grained detail, for some reason that bubbles up for me now.
Sure.
And I have to assume it's because they have adopted this remote work strategy and they are getting input from more than one person.
Sure.
I have to believe that that's why we're getting this level of output, this
Sure.
high quality output.
Sure. No, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what things look like a year from now. But I'm guardedly optimistic that a lot of industries that would have told you a year ago we can't possibly work remotely are like, yeah, no, we can make it work now. I mean,
Yeah,
a friend of ours works for a bank, and he was telling me that making that shift was huge, but they've done it, and they've
yep,
got plenty of regulation that they have to layer on top of that. That they have again
yeah,
managed to make secure workspaces from home. So I think a lot of those traditional sort of inertia we talked about, the organizational inertia, I think is
hmm,
been shattered, by this pandemic, and I want to believe that will be a silver lining that comes out of this.
yep. And yeah, it seems more and more. It seems like I'm getting these signals that companies are like, yeah, oh yeah, and absolutely feel free to move and keep your salary.
Yeah.
Like this is great.
Hmm.
This is great. The idea that and I still don't know what's the right way to do that. Um, yeah, I don't know, but the idea that somebody has that flexibility
Yes.
to make a move without having to sacrifice salary or that kind of stuff, just put themselves in a better position,
Right.
whether it's like mentally, physically, emotionally. Uh, yeah, somebody could do that without having to worry about those extras.
Right.
It's interesting. There's a lot of changes that are going to come along for
Oh
sure.
yeah. Well, and again, I do think it's freeing some folks to make some different decisions. They don't
Yeah,
have to be located in a certain city to be part of that organization. That they can live closer to family or the lake or whatever it is that they really enjoy, because the work-life balance does matter, and being able to have time to do the things you enjoy doing. I do think that's another aspect of this pandemic that has been helpful, is it's sort of reminded some of us, like, oh yeah, I really do like riding my bike, and I have a wonderful family that I don't get to see that often when I'm on airplanes, and so I do think that there's been some, again, positives to come out of this, knock
Yeah.
on wood. But
One of the other things that I'm hearing, or I guess it's just visible, is the changes in how we work.
yeah.
What does your day look like?
Hmm.
And oh well, I wake up early, I get a couple hours of work done, and then I have breakfast with the family.
Right.
I take the kids to school, walk to the bus stop,
Yep.
and then I come and I this focus time, and this is stand up time, and then I have lunch with my wife.
Right.
These types of like different ways of adopting. And I'm concerned about how much time people are putting in, and are we putting in more time?
Yeah.
But again, this is another thing that's on my mind. Like the whole 40-hour work week, is it still 40? Like,
Hmm.
could it be different if it's not like the the 8 to 12, the blocks of focus time? Could it be different? Is that
Right.
okay? Are there risks involved? Uh, if there's a comfort level, right? Especially if we're enjoying what we do,
Yeah.
like maybe it's okay to go past 40,
Sure.
and maybe that's better if we're breaking it up more.
Hmm.
I don't know. That's something that's definitely a thought, and I'm sure that the science will come out eventually. What's the right way to do things?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I feel like we're trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. So, in terms of the pandemic, we keep kind of dancing around this. What have you been doing to kind of maintain a certain level of sanity? Have you picked up any new habits that you're hoping to hang on to? Is there any? Are you baking bread? I got into the bread thing about 6, 8 weeks ago, for better or worse. Yeah.
Uh, no, we got a pandemic puppy, COVID puppy,
Yay!
and that's pretty awesome. Um, but
So you'll
I
definitely be
put
keeping the
together,
puppy post pandemic.
yeah, puppies, still here. I've been in the doghouse quite a few times.
It's fair. It's fair.
The relationship, both of us working from home, and she's got her areas of the house. I always like to say, she's got a chair that she does. That's her spot.
Sure.
But when she's not here, I totally sit in it. Like we have this kind of relationship. With sometimes, I put myself in the doghouse.
Yeah.
Uh, Things that I've adopted. I've done a lot of Legos.
Oh yeah.
Um, I've done a lot of Raspberry Pi stuff. I'm
Okay.
still a geek,
Yeah.
and I think I'm actually watching less TV
Okay.
and digging in more to like the hobbies and I'm looking at my desk and seeing all of the things that are just sitting here. A Raspberry Pi 4 cluster with that's ugly. Um, like this is a project that
Looks
I've
fine to
I've been
me.
working on. Yeah, this is just I didn't think ahead. Power over Ethernet. Like I have all these little projects.
Sure.
NeoPixel. Like trying
Nice.
to get crazy with the lights and all that kind of stuff. Uh, yeah, I'm digging into my hobbies more, and I think that I'm watching TV less.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
It's
really
funny.
trying to learn.
It's funny you mentioned Legos, because I just was listening to a podcast that said Legos. You mean Lego? That
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah,
apparently Americans were the only ones that say Legos.
yeah.
So, but I guess I've always used that too. And ironically enough, the other day my son decided, like literally like 2 days ago, there's been this Lego set that's been sitting over there for I don't know how long. I mean months. And he's like, I'm gonna build that tonight. Oh, okay. And then my wife got him a Lego set for Christmas that was the child, Baby Yoda. And so he built that one last night. And he came up this morning and told me that building Legos before he goes to bed, he says, is very zen. It's very relaxing. I'm like, all right. I
I agree.
totally agree.
I absolutely do agree. I think that that's the best time to do it. Man, Everett, like, wow.
I was
I
slightly
guess
disappointed he didn't let me help him. I'm not going to lie.
there is, yeah, there that it does it. I know that feeling.
Right?
Like, hey, what are you doing over there? Can I
Right.
help?
Right. No,
And one
no.
thing that I'm allowed to do that allows me like play nice
Yeah.
without I don't get to put any pieces together,
Okay.
but I like to sort the Lego.
Oh, yeah.
I
Kids
like
don't like
I'm gonna put
sorting.
I'm going to put the pieces all together so that you can easily find what you're doing. And that way
Right,
I
right,
helped,
right. Yep.
right? I can
I
sit
have
next
some
to you.
ownership.
Yeah. So yeah,
Oh God, that's
but
fantastic.
that before bed, we did several puzzles.
Oh, sure.
And that's something, as a family that we can enjoy. But I think that before bed practice, yeah, I agree. It's one thing that I'm searching for.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I'll think out loud for a minute. I know um, from my experience, are you a note taker?
yeah,
Do you take the daily notes and logs? Um, I've done that in the past, and I can look at those logs, and I can know that when I'm doing these types of things, when my days are going like this, I'm enjoying things a whole lot better.
sure.
I have a concept, a what would you call it, like a yeah, it's a currency in my
Mhm.
house called SAUs,
SAUs.
spousal approval units, where
Oh,
like I have this concept, and it's not a agreed upon currency, but this concept of, hey, if I'm doing these things, I can expect the spousal approval units to be increasing. I can expect that. It doesn't always work out. The market's crazy.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but if I have this kind of routine that's like, hey, this is a time for this. This is a time for me to think. This is a time for me to be in my head. This is a time for me to pour into my kids. This is a time to do the laundry. I can do the laundry whenever I want.
Right.
But if I have something in place and a routine, and that's something that I'm absolutely trying to figure out is if I can get myself back into this mode of, hey, this is daddy time. Hey,
Hmm.
this is focus time. Hey, family time. Like if I can get into a routine, things in my life seem to be better.
Right.
A big part of that is having time inside my own head,
Hmm.
and biking. We talked about running, these exercises, or even just like walking the dog. If there's a time in my day where I can be inside my own head and I can
Right.
think about how did today go or how should today go, like what am I trying to do, what are the priorities, if I can get time to just have that inside my own head, that helps. So I'm definitely trying to figure that out
Sure.
and keep in mind all of the other people in my life, that what's their perception,
Sure.
right? If I'm uh, doing Legos every night, is that okay for everybody? Is that helping everybody else or just me? So that's definitely a thing I'm still exploring, still trying to figure out with this new way. Everybody's making changes, so there's kind of the outside influence. What's everybody else doing?
Hmm.
How's it working for them? Right.
Well,
So yeah,
and that has been a really interesting part of this whole pandemic when because everybody has a different approach to what they're comfortable with, whether it's going to the grocery store or not. Like we've still been going to the grocery store typically, but we've got friends that they haven't set foot in a grocery store since it started. They've been doing curbside pickup or they've been doing delivery the whole time. And it's always interesting when you hear somebody saying they're going to do something that's not in your comfort zone. It's always sort of like, well, you're doing what now? It's like you're jumping out of an airplane. Why would you do that? And then I've got a friend who loves jumping out of airplanes. That's one of his hobbies. And so for him, that's like, dude, that's just Saturday. Like, what's the big deal? And so it's interesting to see how that works, right? That what
yep.
I perceive of versus what somebody else perceives of. It's a good reminder that we may not necessarily be looking at the same thing.
Do you cringe like when you watch shows where they're like, hey, like they automatically, it's a
Right.
hug and it's a handshake.
Right.
Like I'm still like, oh,
Yeah. Oh
why
God.
are we?
It's so whenever you see a movie or a TV show or anything that's from like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and you see something like, you used to be able to smoke on an airplane? Like what? What is that? And
What?
and now you're like, they're not wearing masks. You're like, oh yeah, this is 2 years ago. Like, oh yeah, of course, of course. Like it's funny how quickly that transitions to, my God, they're in a bar with a whole bunch of other people and nobody's wearing masks. This looks very. Oh yeah, no, there was no global pandemic that was killing
Yeah,
millions of people, so it's fine. So
yeah. So now I try to think big and try to be, you know, think 2 steps ahead, right? I try to think of what does this mean now and what will it mean in the future?
mhm.
If we all go remote, what does that mean to our
Oh sure,
communities? How is that going to change? I'm definitely, trying to keep my eye on like real estate, like all these businesses, like Kansas City just redid their downtown to make it, a place where you can work and live. But now if those businesses don't need you there, what's going to
Right.
happen? Is there a reason to move downtown if there's no reason to be downtown?
Right.
There's no work and like, what is going to happen? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay attention,
Yeah.
um, but also the relationships for a long time. And this is a top of mind thread lately. For a long time, I told myself that my work, my output, the code that I was doing was being reviewed. That there was people looking at it all the time. If it was committed, it was in. Somebody saw the quality of my work, and then they were reviewing it, and that's how I was going to, move forward in my career.
Sure.
And that's the biggest lie that I've ever told myself. And I made myself believe that. I convinced myself that I didn't need to do anything else other than good work. And I don't know where I got that from, but it was wrong. Uh, this mode that we're in of working together, right? Doing better, getting more, is kind of on that same thread. The idea that, yeah, I don't know what's next. I
Right.
don't know how things are going to look, uh, but have to kind of think about what are the options. Like, where could this go?
Hmm.
And trying to share that, trying to get people to think, hey, maybe I do need to make my work a little bit more visible.
Sure.
Maybe I do need to bounce it off of somebody else. Right? What if that thing that made it to production, everybody hates? Right? What if they absolutely can't stand it,
Right.
but it's in production? Like,
Right.
do you know? Do you care? Like
And they're afraid
getting
to
that.
say anything because you're the senior guy who built it, and yeah.
Yeah. But there's this idea like, what are things going to look like? What's the community going to look like?
Sure.
What's America gonna look like as we're making this change? And I definitely think this is going to be a uh, you know a moment in time for the history books. Like, hey,
Hmm.
this thing happened and it forced this.
Right. It's a
Right? It
forcing
forced
function.
this big change. What is going to happen? I'm not sure. I'm trying to pay attention. I'm trying to, yeah, keep my eyes and ears open and take notes,
Right.
right? And see.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what this does to downtowns as you describe that. I think about downtown St. Paul, downtown Minneapolis, where you have a bunch of businesses that exist to cater to people who are working downtown. And if 30%, 40%, 70% of those people are not coming downtown anymore,
Or
what
even
happens?
10%, right? For
Right.
a
That's
city
a great point.
like
It
that,
doesn't take much.
even even 10%,
Yeah.
right, is going to change the entire dynamic
Hmm.
and the scale for a lot of those companies.
Yeah. Well, I know when I was working downtown St. Paul, when you would go through the Skyway at lunchtime, every place that served lunch was packed. I mean, just packed. And there was probably a good 2 hour, 3 hour block. The coffee shops were always at least fairly busy. I mean, you could usually get a coffee quick enough, but there's always people sitting there. And I think that isn't happening now. Like, are those businesses still around? Are those restaurants still around? I don't know. What does it mean for them moving forward?
Um, People, I think, still have social and they're still going to need. So I think that, my vision of being, everybody, following the war games model and living on the lake and being solo, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think
Right.
there'll still be cases of that, but I think that people still need people.
Yeah.
I think that, yes, we can get our work done, but social interaction is still a huge part of being a person.
Hmm.
And as we go through our life, it's not about the work necessarily that we've, committed to the repository. It's about the relationships that we've
Yeah.
built,
Yeah.
right? Are we doing, whether it's that customer that we never see, the leadership that we don't see, but the relationships that we're building along the way, that's
Yeah.
the important part. And I think that, if there's a scale in my head of, the quality of my work and the relationships that I'm building, yeah, it's tipping
Yeah.
towards the relationships and the excitement. I like to say the teaching part of what we
Hmm.
do. Um, I don't know if you've ever like focused on it, that the person in the audience where they just figured out like how this is going to help them going forward, and
Yes.
they're
Yes.
like,
You see the light bulb go off, you're like,
yeah,
ah,
and
yep,
it brightens the room, right?
yep.
And it's 20 rows back, and she's just now
Yep.
like, this is it. And it brightens. You can feel the force. Like, oh, I've done it. I
Yep.
can feel it.
Yep.
That's the thing that excites me, right?
Yeah.
That connection, right? It wasn't my best talk ever, but
Right.
somebody got it, and they're hopefully it's going to open up a door.
Yeah.
There's another concept that I've kind of latched onto lately. Start with a narrow hallway with all the doors closed, and let the doors open as you go along your journey.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make that a part of my life. And again, it's one of those things I'm like, does that mean, could it mean this too? That's just the idea. I don't have the answers. That's me being as much Yoda as I can, and I'm adopting it from a friend. But that's that concept, that idea. Like, hey, let's do one at a time.
You're being so profound today, my friend.
This is all of those things that have kind of like fallen in. Uh, Again, that time inside my head.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm 45, and I don't know what your parents like. My dad, he always had that one liner, like that
Mm-hmm.
thing, like this is what you do, is the one that's top of mind. Again, as I'm talking, is that whole like ladder, the career ladder.
Mm-hmm.
He would always tell me is you cannot get pushed up the ladder. You have to be pulled up, but you have to be held up.
Yeah.
This idea, this is one of those things that I'd heard all the time growing up, but my dad had that phrase. He had that
Yeah.
phrase for everything. And I feel like I'm at that point where I need to have that. This is the vague way of describing how I think about things,
Mm-hmm.
that has some, truth at the core. It gets fuzzy on the implementation, but I try to, I'm trying to, boil things down, get my
Right.
opinions, and I'm willing to change. I'm willing to change my opinions, and that's part of it. That's part of,
Right.
trying to continue to learn.
Right. Oh,
I
that's
want
a
to get better.
great way of thinking about it. I think sometimes we forget those people that mentored us, and I always try to think back on the teacher I had or the person who helped me in my career, showed me this way or that way, and I think it's helpful for all of us to reach out and thank those people from time to time. I know I haven't been particularly good at that, but we've all had those doors open for us, or people have given us that helping hand. And as we get to this point in our career, I think part of our job is now, okay, well, now we got to reach down to help some folks up too, and help them grow and become the best version of themselves they can be. I always plan on being this profound on a Monday. I've only had like 2 double espressos, so thank you. This is your energy here, buddy. I appreciate it.
We got started early, right?
We did. We did.
We got started, and my mind is just, you took me to places where I wasn't really ready to go today,
Well,
but we're
I
here,
try.
and we're here together,
We are.
and I I just I really enjoy what I do,
That's awesome, man.
and I'm yeah, I'm grateful of the fact that I have people like you in my life. We talk about thanking. Like, I don't know that I have ever told you thanks, right? There's these things that have happened, and
Yeah.
I know that I've told Mark Heckler, right? He's just one of those people where we connected. We'd never met. I'd never been to the conference, but I saw him on the YouTube, and I adopted things. But he connected. He reached out over Twitter and
Sure.
or LinkedIn or whatever. And he said, "Hey, have you considered this?"
Sure.
He literally, put his time into me, having never met. And I know I've told Josh and Marcin, and like, there's these things that have happened over time. And I'm like, it was that one way. It was a talk that you'd done 20 times, but the
Right.
time that you did it at Seattle's user group, that time you said
Mm-hmm.
this, and it
And it
clicked.
clicked. Yeah.
Right. So I know I've had those conversations with people along the way. Uh, I think our friend that's now in the banking industry, I think I've had that conversation with him as well. But there's things, and
Right.
sometimes it's really nice to tell that person, to say, hey, this is the concrete example of, every time I think about this, I think about you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Uh, yeah. Like, it's the relationships,
Yeah.
both sides. Lift as you climb is another way
Yeah.
of putting it.
Yeah. That's a great phrase.
Lift as you climb. Yeah.
You know,
I
I,
just after that.
I had this gentleman really early in my career. I might have been a couple years out of school, maybe not even. And I bumped into him in the fitness center, and he asked me how I was doing, and I just sort of vented on him for 5 minutes. And He very easily could have just said, "Oh, okay, well, have a good workout." But instead, he's like,
Alrighty then.
"Yep." But instead, he's like, "What can I do to help? What can
Isn't
I
that a great
do?"
question?
And I'm like, "Wow, okay." And this is just how serendipitous the world is. Unbeknownst to me, he actually lives fairly close to me, and I ran into him at the local fitness center that I haven't been to now in a year thanks to the pandemic. But I bumped into him just randomly one day, kind of in the hallway, and then I thought, next time I see him, I got to tell him that story. And so, sure enough, I bumped into him again a few weeks later. I said, "Terry, I just got to tell you, you don't even remember this, but you gave me this little wisdom of leadership 20 years ago that I've hung on to this entire time." And I could tell that he appreciated that, right? And I just felt I needed to share that with him. That little, what was probably a throwaway moment for him, did have an effect on me, and is something that I have carried forward to say, okay, when I have an opportunity, what can I do to help? And,
Yeah,
and it's like, so yeah, I think it's good for us to remember that kind of stuff. So yeah, God, we
that's
really
great.
did get profound on a Monday. My gosh, friend.
Asking those questions, being present,
Yeah,
right? That example. Yeah, it sometimes it's just easy to be like, all right, that's cool,
right.
and get out. But the main question, like, hey, how are you? I try
Yeah.
to ask it different, not just I don't want the the automatic response.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to ask different. How's your soul?
Yeah.
I'm here. Like, how's everything? Like, how are you feeling
Hmm.
on the inside? I try to ask that question, and then that response that you shared, it's like, how can I help?
Hmm.
Like, are you in a spot where you'd appreciate some help?
Right. Right.
Right? These kind of things, like they're easy things to do, and like it's not a commitment to ask somebody, can I help you? Like, it's
Hmm.
not a commitment. You're not saying, hey, oh, well, what if they say they need somebody to bounce some ideas off of, and I don't have time to do that?
Sure.
But find out. What if, hey, you know what? You could help me in 3 months for my next talk. I'd like to run it by you
Hmm.
before I go. Like,
Hmm.
it's okay. It's okay to put yourself out there and make yourself available.
Right. Right. Wow. Well, so I think the message that I want people to take away from our chat here today, my friend, is say thanks to somebody today or next week, and be available to help somebody. Ask somebody what you can do to help. So I appreciate that, my friend, for taking me to that place today.
This has been good.
This has been fantastic.
This is it really helped my soul,
It helped me
right?
too. I was so glad when I reached out to you that you were willing to do this and that we could get you on the show. I do appreciate your time. I can't believe we've already been talking for an hour, and I'd easily chat with you for another hour, but I'm sure you have other things you need to do today. And we
I
got to
took today
none of my
off.
questions. Not one. I have this whole list of
Eh,
questions. I got to none of it. And that's because of
Today's
you. You're awesome.
a holiday. I when you asked me to come on the show, I chose this day for a reason. So yeah, I'm going to enjoy the rest of the day.
Fantastic.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here on a day like today, and yeah, it, life is good. And yeah, I this was great.
This has been
I
fantastic.
have I absolutely look forward to the next time we can just Zoom.
Yeah.
We can just hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be on the show. And yeah, just have more of these
We need
conversations.
to do
That's
that.
another thing. Yeah.
100%, buddy. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. Go build some Lego with your kids, or Legos, as we would say here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Apparently saying it wrong, but we
Yeah. When in
will.
Rome, right?
When in Rome, right? Exactly, exactly. And if you do want to move to northern Minnesota, that would be just fine with me. I'd be happy to have you in my zip code, so that would be
Right now.
lovely.
I'll continue to visit.
Yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're about 2 hours south of what I would consider northern Minnesota. In my opinion, you got to be up in Duluth and north to truly be in that part of the world. But there is some, we have a lot of lakes here. There's no getting around that.
Yeah, a lot of lakes.
A
I don't
lot of
have to go to
lakes.
northern Minnesota to find a lake.
No, no,
Right.
no. There are at least three or four, within stone's throw from where I'm sitting right now. So yeah, we do like our lakes here. My son actually would like to trade lakes with Colorado for some mountains because we don't have any mountains. So
Colorado seems to be a hot spot these days.
I wouldn't, that is on the list of places I would move, to be real honest with you. So not that I'm looking to
Yeah.
move, but I would, Colorado would be in my top five for sure.
Yeah. I
So
think that we're the same.
yeah, yeah, the mountains are pretty. So that is one of my excuse me, lightning questions that we didn't get to: mountains versus ocean. But I think you're with me. I'd go mountains.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Agree. I
Well,
like
thank
that.
you, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day. I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely have to do just a catch up Zoom call at some point here in the next couple months. And I'm dying to hear how you're getting settled in. And when you do learn the magic for removing vowels and consonants from column names, do let me know because it's still a mystery to me. So I think it's
I
meant
will.
to be, in my
I
opinion.
will.
But
If I get through that gate, I will pull you through with me.
fantastic, my friend. I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much. And next week we'll be on the show. Let me just double check my calendar to make sure I am not wrong, but it should be Trisha G. And I'm very excited to have that because Java champion, our Java developer advocate lead at JetBrains. So I'm very excited for that show. Should be fun. Should be fun. So
Absolutely.
awesome.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again, my friend, and we will see you soon. Cheers.
All right. See